Good evening from the UK and welcome to Inception Special on a Saturday night. I have a very special guest tonight and I'm smiling already because he's going to speak about something that is dear to my heart and I really would like to learn lots more. And I know he's going to validate a few things that I'm pondering on. So tonight I have a wonderful guest, Adam Oliver. I'm going to read my auto cue, guys. Adam Oliver Stokes holds degrees in religion from Duke University and Yale Divinity School. His interests as a researcher include Old Testament history, Mormon studies, and ancient American history, with a particular focus on the lost giants of pre-Columbia America. My favorite topic. He is the author of From Egypt to Ohio, a Semitic Origin for the Giants of North America, and the Latin Scrolls, selections from the Five Megilloth, translated.
You got it.
Oh, so I'm struggling with the words here. Hold on. Translated from the Latin Vulgate. His work has been featured in numerous journals and magazines, and he has been a frequent guest on various podcasts. Now, that's all I'm reading because the rest is going to become apparent and obvious as me and this wonderful man, Adam, has a conversation. Welcome to Inception. Welcome.
Great to be here, Gloria. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my
Looking forward to it.
Oh God, I'm just too excited because I know where we're going to go. So I need to calm down. I love my shows because I have such wonderful guests come on and I learn all the time. I just learn of different perceptions and truths. And I just find it so fascinating how we can individually and collectively experience the same, so to speak, but our individual perception is so different of it. And I think that's the beauty of the human experience. So on that note, I'm going to say to you, Adam, where did your spiritual journey begin that led you to the Giants?
Absolutely. You know, I've always been a spiritual person, Gloria. Even when I was really, really little, I remember my earliest memories where my mom taking me to a Baptist church in Baltimore. I remember the chairs being these little rusty, rickety wooden chairs, and hearing the pastor preach, and I was really into it. And so I've always had that aspect in me for a while. I went to divinity school oh my goodness, it's been about 20 years almost now.
Wow.
But I was going to be a Baptist minister. I had a little crisis of faith. I didn't have really any official religious affiliation for several years, even though I still consider myself very much a spiritual person. And then I got involved with one of the lesser denominations within the Latter-day Saint tradition, or the Mormon tradition. And for all Mormon traditions, the main sacred text is the Book of Mormon, which talks about an ancient advanced civilization that once existed here in North America, which is kind of a really kind of controversial claim. People really don't have any problems with saying that the advanced civilization existed in South America. You see that with the Aztecs and the Mayans.
Yeah.
But if you say anything about North America, that really gets controversial. So that kind of was an impetus for my own research into finding, is there any truth to this claim that there was an ancient civilization here years ago? And that put me in touch with other researchers, put me in touch with work that was being done about the Hopewell and the Adena, who were these ancient giants who lived in Midwest America. And the rest was history from there. And in short, what I was able to find as a researcher through the archaeological evidence, through the oral tradition of the Native American people, was that, yes, an advanced civilization did exist here. And in fact, Native Americans are descended from that advanced civilization, and their oral history carries a lot of memories of it.
Wow. I mean, we're going to unpack all of that in a sec. I mean, here in the UK, but my family is Irish. And obviously growing up and you hear all the tales, and I was aware of the giants. Always it's
Yes.
been the giants and the leprechauns. The Celtic,
Yes.
the Irish people, they have a beautiful blend of myths and fables that I now come to find out are absolutely true. They're not myths and fables. However, so that was already in me as a young person. And then later on down the line, when I started studying everything in the whole of the universe, as you do on your journey, I studied the giants on the mainland of the United Kingdom. And that was, God, that must be about 20 years ago. And I was fascinated because the reason I was so fascinated then is because I'd already studied mythology, comparative religions, and these giants kept popping up, the Greek gods. And so I have this, like you do multiple research in multiple things, but your path leads you to one, and you tend to put it on a back burner. So even though I studied the gods and the times of Plato and Socrates and all of that, it went on a back burner. But recently, as my guests come on, if anyone talks about giants, I'm on it. Speak to me about the giants, because I am really passionately interested in who these beings were. So before we go into the tribes you spoke of and these beings, as I said prior to recording, I call the giants the gods. I just know them as the gods for some reason. So it's over to you. Do tell us about the giants.
Well, I definitely think, as we were talking about earlier, for ancient peoples coming into contact with these giants, they would, and in fact, they did consider them to be God-like beings. Now, I don't necessarily view them as supernatural, even though I think they had a very close, extremely intimate, especially with the giants of Ireland and the mainland. I think they had a very extremely intimate relationship with the supernatural, both for good and for bad. But for your average human being, and remember, in the ancient world, people were smaller than us. One of the things that often fascinates me in looking at the past is I'm a short person. I'm only 5'2". But if I went back, say, in Thomas Jefferson's time, and in fact, I've seen Thomas Jefferson's bed, my feet would be hanging out of his bed. I would have been considered a pretty, at least an average, if not taller person in ancient times. So encountering somebody who is at least 7 feet, and the traditions of, the European giants, they're a lot taller than that. Encountering a being like that, you would definitely consider that person to be a god. It's funny. One of my favorite movies is Ridley Scott's Prometheus. It has a lot of my stuff in it, but the premise is that they find this alien civilization that's responsible for humankind, and these aliens are these huge giants whom the archaeologists in the movie, they realize that ancient human beings were calling these guys gods. And I think that's the exact same thing that's going on here. They're considered gods because they're so tall, and not just the tallness, but also the type of civilization that they had with very, very
you
advanced.
Say advanced, I was going to say advanced. I mean, so could we, put an inference into scripture? I mean, I remember studying, obviously we all know about the angels and whatever terminology, and the gods on earth, and they mated with the woman. We've got all that, and then we have the most famous Christian story, David and Goliath. So you've got Christendom saying there were giants on the earth. So do you think there was a specific era on the on a point where I don't know what BC, AD, or any D, but do you think that when it was this global on Earth, these giants were here?
Yeah, I think it goes back to before recorded history. So if we take the Bible timeline, just chronologically, the Bible, I think, goes back to 4,000 or 6,000 BCE. I think that the giant civilization was before then in its heyday. And I've mentioned this on other podcasts, I think there's a very strong connection to that kind of primordial giant civilization and the civilization of Atlantis,
Yeah.
which was likely located, even though there's some debate about this. I think they're related, but likely located around the British Isles, though
Mm.
we have evidence for an Atlantean civilization with giants, as my friend
Yeah.
Heather Arnold would say. In the Caribbean, I think it's the exact same group. I think they're just migrating from one place to
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
But I think this goes back to before really written, recorded human history. And so that by the time you have the traditions that you have in the Bible,
Yeah.
most people don't remember where these giants came from.
I'm with
We like to think of the Bible as, when I was raised, I went to a Christian school, for better or worse. But we like to think of the Bible as, the earliest history of mankind, but it's actually very, very late. And a lot of the
very
stories in the
late.
Bible,
Yeah.
extremely late. I mean,
Yeah.
you compare it to Hinduism,
Yeah.
which goes back, way, way further than
Way
that.
back. I
Yes,
mean, we can go to Hinduism. Is it the verdict or something?
the Vedas. Yep.
Yeah, we can go back there. And I remember when I say I studied, I mean, a lot of the stuff, it's superficial. It was just my path to gather
Yeah.
information. And I remember them speaking of giants or they called them the gods, and actually, fighting in the sky and things like this. So I remember that. And also when you go back to the Sumerian tablets,
Yes, yes. Gilgamesh and all those. Yep.
go all the way back. So yeah, I think for me, I mean, my limited understanding is it's like I call them the gods or the giants were here first. It seems like they were before the Homo sapien
Yeah.
current 200,000-year-old us. What do you think about that? Do you think they were here from the get-go?
I think the giants were here from the get-go. Now, I think human beings existed way before Darwinian, as we exist now, way
Yeah.
before Darwinian evolution gives them
Yeah.
credit for.
Yeah.
I think the archaeological evidence supports that.
Yeah.
But at the very beginning, there were these giants.
Yeah.
And then us average, our normal sized human beings came along. And really we were kind of like the slave class. And that goes into a whole other question of where we came from.
Yes.
We were kind of like a slave class for the giants.
Yes.
And the giants basically were overthrown eventually by us because of their cruelty.
Well, yeah,
And
I mean, that would go back to the Sumerian tablets. I mean, that's in there.
yeah,
But also,
yeah, Gilgamesh basically Gilgamesh is a giant, and he
yeah,
basically we think of him as a hero, but he starts off as kind of a douchebag.
yeah,
The people in his city that he rules, they don't like him. He
no,
is, taking their women.
yeah,
He's making them, do all this slave labor.
yeah.
So very similar to what we get with other descriptions of giants throughout the world.
Yes, yes. I mean, I remember as a child, I don't know if you have it in America, but in the UK, we've always had, even, our nursery rhymes. It's not until you get older that you realize the nursery rhymes are absolutely horrific, what we sing to our children. Yeah. I mean, it's like, what the fudge? What are we doing? But I always remember, I've got 6 children, and I always remember, doing the fee, fi, fo, fum. It's a giant one. I smell the blood of an Englishman. It was the giant smelling, the little humans to eat them.
To eat them. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So and we have cannibalistic giants elsewhere in the world, in North America too.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. So, I sort of read that they would eat you. That was the first one. And then, took back to the UK and Ireland. I can't remember the name of the documentary or anything like that, but a historian went back and actually found archaeological proof. We're not talking skeletons because they disappear, but there was something else it was to do. I don't know how he did it, but it was evidential, and it was just too much to throw it out. But I mean, if they managed to show all the skeletal remains, which I'm sure they're in the museum, hidden away, that would have been.
Skeletons tend to disappear.
They just in the UK they disappear. On that, before we go into the different types of giants and who they truly were, what point or why, I've never been able to find the answer, why have they hidden the skeletal remains of the giants? What is it they don't want us to know? And I will premise that with my, when I've used some discernment on this, like, well, they must have been like super powerful beings or or they could be interdimensional beings or angelic beings, or because why hide? Why hide, Adam? Why are they still hiding this away?
Yeah, I think there's two things going on here. I think there's a broader kind of the foci of mainstream academia, and Jim Vieira talks about this all the time, the kind of materialism and the anti-supernaturalism that is the kind of default position in academia. Now, academia, thanks to you guys over across the seas, that's where Charles Darwin initially, arose with his with his research, and you know that has been what's been taught for almost 200 years, that we evolved from these protoplasm all the way to the monkeys, and then to us. And I'm not entirely knocking that, but I actually think that the past history of human beings is much more complicated than that. And I think giants, when you start discovering these giants, that kind of throws a big wrench into the concept of human development that gets taught by Neil deGrasse Tyson or James Watson and stuff like that. So I think,
I jump in here because I want to say something recent come out in the UK that really kicks the Darwinian theory to the rubbish bin where I think it should be. There are elements, I get that, is the scientists in the UK, even though most of the world knew about this, well, those interested in the aspect of it, they finally said, okay, octopuses are not related to us. They're not in our chain. They're sentient beings, but they don't belong to us and the rest of us. And what, we got DNA and everything with other animals and blah, blah. Now that come out 2 weeks ago, but it come out in a little thing just published. I didn't see it. I don't have a TV because I don't watch TV, but I didn't see it plastered everywhere. So they're alien, that the octopuses, so don't follow this Darwinian line. So where the hell did they come from?
Yeah, well, I think, the fact you said you saw it in a little small paragraph or something, that's kind of big news. But somebody doesn't want that's really big news, but somebody doesn't want people to know that, because this, I think, with the octopuses and the giants, that flies in the face of what academia has been teaching for the past 200 years. And that's going to upset a lot of things and have to force people to reevaluate a lot of things they really don't want to. I think the dogma is too firmly ingrained. Now, for going over to my side of the Atlantic in North America, I think that these giants pose a threat because for, I would say, the past 150 years, which has been changing, which has changed recently, but especially when I was a kid, there was, and this is only in the 1990s, there was this notion that the Native Americans, there was this horrible, racist, ridiculous notion that the Native Americans had no culture, they were uncivilized, they were just running around picking berries and didn't get any civilization until the European settlers came in there. So we can't have these giants, we can't have these pyramids and these mounds that are connected to these giants that are just as elaborate as what we get in Egypt, because that means the Native Americans have a civilization. And that was taught to me, like I said, this is as recent as the 1990s. And slowly the Smithsonian is starting to turn around and say, oh, the Native Americans did have, a little bit of a culture. And so if you go to the Smithsonian now, in DC, like my wife and I did a couple of years ago, they have, some exhibits, some actually really good exhibits on Native American history. But this was not the case for 150 years. And in fact, one of the founders of the Smithsonian, John Percy, was deliberately brought in to kind of hush up any evidence for an advanced civilization of Native Americans, because if that was the case, then you would have to treat the Native Americans as human beings and not try to steal all of their land and kill all of them.
And you can't. So, I've got to come in that from my part from the UK. I remember being a small child, and all of a sudden, my mother had this black and white TV and then a color TV. All of a sudden, there were these cowboy and Indian films, just one after another, that were depicting these barbaric Indians. And now and again, you'd get a nice story, but, and it didn't resonate with me. Anyway, cut this long story short. Then later on down the line, when I was into research, whatever, before my father passed, and I don't know how the conversation got struck up. Oh, that was it. And I said, I just found out, this is, God, how long ago was this? I don't know. My father died ages ago. And I said to him, oh my God, it's just been disclosed that the British government sent blankets to a group of native Indians covered in smallpox. And it was a mass genocide to kill them all off. And I was trying to process this because it shatters everything. And my father said, that is true. And then he said something to me I've never heard anyone else mention. I have spoken of it a couple of times. And he said, do you know who was the first man to scalp? And he said it wasn't the Indians, it was the white man. It was the British. They scalped. They were the ones that scalped. And the history, my dad was Irish, but the history has been flipped. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that either. So coming through, I think you can understand why they do what they do to hide, and the victors always write the script. However,
absolutely.
I just wanted to show you how there's a parallel on this island over here, similar atrocities that were occurred over there. Yeah,
same story. I think
about them. There was something about them. I don't know. How does this resonate with you? Like you get today, you can hear authentic. I used to love the Apache tribe. I don't know why. Just as you do, just don't know why.
Yeah.
But I can hear music now or anything like that, and there's something about when they sing. When they sing, to me, it's very spiritual. It's very.
It is. It's very
transcendent.
Yeah.
They obviously had something about them that the colonials, which I'm terribly sorry is the UK, because we invaded your country as well, didn't we? You know what I mean? Sorry about that. I wasn't there. There's something that was a big threat, wasn't it, to them?
Yeah, well, I mean, even, I have many friends who are from different Native American tribes. I have a close friend who's Cherokee. And they're still very much, I would say that they are deeply in touch with the spiritual realm. The star people,
yes,
just the ancestors, everything, much more so than, and I say this, I'm a traditional Christian. I'm an evangelical Christian, but I would say much more so than Christianity is in touch with the spiritual. I think Christianity, with a lot of its dogmas and traditions, has kind of shut itself off from having that access to the supernatural that the Native American community has.
Okay.
So,
I mean, why I brought all this up is to put it into context, because we're going back to the giants, but we've had to bring in why we don't have a history. So we've touched upon a few things. I can understand why the giants, why my father being Irish wasn't biased because of the Celtic, and the history in Ireland. It's a very spiritual, deep. Yeah. It's very deep, traditional Irish spirituality with the fairies, the elementals. And so I can understand why it was kept alive in such a culture that was passed on to me. And I'm going to come into that if my father hadn't, if I hadn't found out about what the British did with the smallpox blankets, but then if my father hadn't told me about it was the white man scalping first, and we all know that Mr. Custer, who I won't even give him his title, was an evil, sadistic, psychopathic, that come out. If that hadn't happened,
I think you're too nice to him.
Yeah, I think you're way too nice to him. I don't want to go in their negative energy. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to use the words to give them, anything. That gave me like a door opened for me to connect more to the Native American Indians, to find out more, which I obviously did. I went on and on, but also it brought me to what I spoke to you about before. The Native American people, exceptionally spiritual. It's like a transcendence. It was in the Irish culture as well. And
Yeah.
both, I'm sure there were giants everywhere else, but we're talking about the two, my side, your side. They had the contact with the giants.
Mhm.
There must have been something, these giants must have been of either higher evolution in consciousness or something,
Yeah.
because obviously where did the little humans, because I'm short too, the Irish are short as well, darling, where did they get this? Where did they get this initiation from?
Yeah.
And it's about initiation to the truth of the expression of yourself. It must have been the giants. So they had to be
Yeah.
more than just giants.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, the Giants were operating on a higher spiritual plane than we were. Then I think we're able,
Mm,
I think so much of in modern times with our materialism and our secularism, we've lost that kind of
mm,
spiritual connection.
mm,
I think, I've said this on other podcasts, the Giants, their civilization was, so advanced, but it wasn't like a Steve Jobs
mm.
type of Apple technology. I think a lot of this was in their head. They were able to move things. They were able to travel distances
Yeah.
in their head through their psychic thought, through their
Yes,
psychic
yes, yeah.
power. And
Yeah.
you see that with the Druids and
Yes.
the pre-Christian
Yes.
tribes in Ireland. You
Yes.
see that
Yeah.
they were able to tap into that same ability.
Yes.
And I think that the Giants, passed, for at least for a while until we get kind of modern society with the secularism, those
Yeah.
traditions are passed down
Yeah.
even when the Giants cease to exist themselves.
Yeah, I think they were passed down. I mean, I use the terminology, you said they can move places in their head. I use it because we change our linguistics over the years, and it's a timeline shift. We shift, you can shift timelines and experience different things.
Yeah.
So I resonate with everything you said. And also the giants, whether we call them ET or angels, we're going to come to that in a minute. You can share what the Native Americans, Indians call them or believe them to be. Um, I think they had, we can call it superpowers compared to our limited consciousness, but they had something that obviously they brought, especially to the islands here, that shifted the consciousness of the people, that become very spiritual. Obviously, then Christian German, at the time it was Catholicism until that was erased. They were burnt, killed, tortured. They were called pagans. They were called everything. Anyone that was spiritual had to be annihilated, literally, because. And when I look at that, I think, okay, so again, I go back to what I said earlier on. What is the threat of it? Whatever they received from these giants, these gods, what was it and who are they? So I'm going to bring that back now. For if you could share even one aspect of the Native Americans, if you choose, or more, how do they portray these giants? Do they perceive them as the gods?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that in Native American tradition, the term for the giants that's used is the Mound Builders.
Mhm.
They're the people who are responsible for all across the North America.
Mhm.
We think of South America, of course, with the actual stone pyramids, but
Yeah,
there are these mounds, very similar to what you guys have in Europe. These
yeah,
mounds that were
yeah.
built.
Stones, yeah, we've got
They're all
stone circles.
most
Yeah.
Yep, yep, like Stonehenge and stuff. Um, a lot of them have been destroyed, but many of them still exist. I was out in Iowa a couple months back, and you drive down the highway, it's just mound and mound and mound, one after the other, after the other. So a lot of them still exist.
Mhm.
But the mound builders, the Native American traditions describe them as having, godlike powers. They were the rulers
Mhm.
of their civilization. So when we find burials of them in the mounds, they're buried with their servants, with elaborate jewelry, with elaborate items,
Yeah,
even with tablets that describe their history and who they are.
yeah,
They definitely, for a Native American tradition, if there's not a connection, if they're not called gods directly, they were definitely seen as having godlike and supernatural
yeah,
powers and
yeah.
being kind of a more advanced race than the people who came after them.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, I'm soon next month. I'm going away for the UK Christmas holidays. I'm going to an island off the mainland, to the Isle of Wight, and I'm so attracted to go because in my research, there's this long stone. It's a megalithic long stone.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and I've done some research, and the history that's coming out goes way back, 400 and something, whatever, Trevor, even I think before even the Romans come in, and there's recorded history, there's stuff coming out that the Romans had written about, they were really, you say Viking, they were German, they were like a Germain, and I'm just starting to research, and I've got this, like, I need to go there, and the universe has just made everything happen that I will be going spend 4 days on this island to visit many places, and I was fully aware that there's an energy there, and I was fully aware it was to connect with these gods. Now I'm coming back to, we got giants, so but this was just my awareness or downloads that were coming in. So I did some more research recently, and oh my God, and there were giants on the island, and there's mythology and tales of the giants and the small people, so similar to what you express about other civilizations around the world. So not only England, I'm going to an island off England. It wasn't called, I can't remember the name, it wasn't called the Isle of Wight, but it's got such rich history. But you know what? I've also found out that then this country erased it from the Romans and on and on. The barbaric, they were called barbaric, and apparently it's now coming out, they were highly intelligent, highly spiritual, and they could do magic. They had wizards. There was two main. So coming into it's a global.
It's so funny you mentioned that, Gloria, because my main occupation is that of a high school Latin teacher, and I try to make my Latin classes as interesting as I can. So half of it, when I was taught Latin, I had a great Latin teacher. So I don't mean to bash him at all when I say this, but we opened up Cicero and we just read Cicero for an hour and a half. So I try to do something different with my students. So half of the class will be traditional Latin translation.
Yeah.
And the second half of the class will learn something about Roman history.
Yeah.
And what we've been doing, I've been using the Cambridge course, and we've been looking at the kings of basically Ireland and Britain, and a guy named Cogidubnus, who was made king of the Britons under Emperor Claudius. And it's funny when you talked about the destruction of this primordial spirituality. Claudius, so Cogidubnus had, his own priest and his own rituals. We would call them pagan, but they connected, to the spiritual realm. And when Claudius came in, Emperor Claudius said, no, you can't have any of that. You have to worship our Roman gods, Minerva and Neptune. So he destroys his own temple, his ancestral temple, and builds a new temple to the Roman gods, Neptune and Minerva. And then after that, like you said, the Christians come in, and it's basically the same thing.
Exactly the same thing. And it is, the research, I haven't finished my research, and obviously I'm going to go there and be in that energy next month. But when you see the destruction, and again, so I'm going to come back again. Now, I will say the research coming out so far, these giants were called the gods. They were the gods. They had magical power. And there's the story, well, they say it's a myth, I don't know yet, but of how the wizards, these powerful ones, would use magic, and like Star Wars, to they're having a disagreement between them. There's going to be a polarity even with the giants, obviously. So I can see why I'm taking it down this road is because to bring it together to see how they would have been all here at one time, and then the subsequent destruction of history and the belief, but it didn't destroy it. This is what I'm coming to now. What's happened now, and I'm finding that globally around the world, you speaking up, going on all the podcasts, it's coming out. And what I found out about the Isle of Wight, never mind what I found out about my ancestry with the Irish, it's coming back. The truth will be revealed, what is hidden. So now I want to bring that into a place. I still want to find out who the giants were. We've touched upon it. One says superpowers, one says this. When I look at all the megalithic buildings in the world, many people say, well, the average human person couldn't have done the precision, the accuracy of such large blocks of thousands of tons. And I get that, that's obvious, okay? Yeah. And unless there was all the most highest technology that got, I don't know, hidden somewhere, it must have been another being. So many say ET, that's not a problem. For me, the word ET is an umbrella. It could be angels, it could be giants, it could be anything like that. So I don't limit myself to, it's got to be ET in a spaceship. No, no, no. Let's start on them. Their civilization, it would fall into place that they could build these buildings with great ease, could they not, and precision? And if they
absolutely, and I think it goes back to that psychic power that they had. I think that Stonehenge, these massive stones, you're not going to get like even a ton of people, slave labor, and I hate when they have these ancient Bible movies when they show the Egyptians and they have this thousands and thousands of slaves pushing these things, which is utter garbage. We know, even from the Egyptian records, they did not have thousands and thousands of slaves. Yes, there is historicity. I talk about this in my Old Testament class with the Hebrews leaving Egypt, but they were kind of a smaller, lower level class. But these thousands, my point going, these thousands and thousands of slaves trying to build these pyramids, that's utter garbage. They used their psychic ability for this. The giants of Britain and Ireland used their psychic abilities to build these things, and they moved these huge, massive rocks around as easy as you and I cut butter.
I mean,
to put on bread.
We've got it in the UK, like Stonehenge, the blue stones. I think it was Wales they were brought over from. How the hell? Yeah. I mean,
you can't do.
You can't do it.
That's impossible.
Even their ropes wouldn't have been there. Didn't have nylon ropes. Their ropes wouldn't have took the weight. The friction. It wouldn't have took.
The friction for that amount of distance. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So we're looking at. We can see another way where they cover up these giants, and we're going to find out who they are. Were a powerful supernatural race, and they seem to bring something to the humans on this planet that not only raised them spiritually, this transcendence of it, but give them skill sets. And I mean, come on, you got to look at how the hell did the Romans do central heating? No one ever questions that. It's never taken out of the history books that the frigging Romans had central heating. And we got a program in the UK. I watched it for years. It's the Time Team, and they'd go archaeology and they'd go looking for Roman stuff. They went on the Isle of Wight, and you always find this central heating, and they just say, yeah, they had central heating, and like that's it. And I'm going,
yeah, you don't explain ever how you got
how the hell like did they have the technology to understand central heating, but they couldn't do something else? No. So you can see what is allowed through that, what is allowed in the history books. And then I come to the conclusion, well, actually, history is a load of BS. There's elements of truth, but it's a load of BS. However, I just want to throw that in. How the hell did the Romans have central heating? Fine. The gods taught them how to do it and how it works. But however, that's not related to the gods. And anyone else that does anything like that, in the Native American Indians or any island, then it's a lie, it's a myth. We'll hide that away because they're just, nobodies. They can't. Yeah. And so you can see that. Now, where I'm taking this now is, again, I'm pulling it back because we could go anywhere with this, which is fantastic because I love it. Who are the gods? Now, hold on, the gods. I remember when I was studying, Christianity in the Bible, I studied all the Abrahamic religions and obviously the Eastern ones later. Just when I say studied, I mean, just studied, research. And I remember reading the height of some beings that are written in the Bible.
Mhm.
They were giants, okay? And then I also remember, well, we all know that the angels came down, they called them angels. Depends which Bible you get, they change the terminology. And
Yes.
these beings come down and they mated with the woman. But I know there is a couple of paragraphs in the Bible. They loved them. They loved these women. There was no anger or hate. It is in there. I don't know where, because I'm not a biblical, scholar. And when I put all of that from that scripture, the giants were in Islam, the giants were in Judaism, the giants were in, but we're sticking on the three Abrahamic religions. So if you say the angels come down, analogy, or go physical, were they angels or were they demigods? Let's use the word demigods, not God source, because my truth is there is a source and there's the creator gods. So the creator gods, so to speak. So let's really do a deep dive now. Let's really find out who these giants really are and their relevance to us.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because Josephus, for example, he links a lot of the biblical giants as their ancestors as being the Greek gods. So the demigods, Hercules, for example,
Yes.
Is seen as one of the ancestors of the biblical gods that Moses and later the Israelites, Joshua, David, and etc. fight. So definitely for the ancients, the giants were considered, divine or semi-divine beings. And I've mentioned this before. One of the most famous Near Eastern gods, El, was likely a giant.
Yeah.
And when he dies, he basically gets deified by the people around him as a god. And so El becomes linked in when Israel comes on the scene. The Hebrews link El with their god. So you have Adonai, Elohim, El Shaddai. All these terms are seen as terms for the biblical God. So it may be that these giants, wherever they came from, they were certainly identified as divine or semi-divine, and they kind of get in the memories of the people. They get incorporated into their religious pantheon.
Yeah. Do you think that it's the same beings? Let's say they're angels. Let's use the word angels. Obviously, we know, going back in civilization through the human journey, if you see something you don't know and it's absolutely out there, you're going to you're going to be fearful. It's got to be the God. It's got to be. You couldn't read or write or whatever. It's got to be. You get that. But do you think every culture, even you said the Native Americans call them the star beings, which I think is so beautiful to say that.
Yes, but
But I do remember studying the Greek gods, and I always remember when I was studying it years ago, when I was young, and I'd go, "That's not a myth; they're real." I somehow knew they were real. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. So, do you think over the eons we've just given them different names like giants or angels?
Absolutely. Now, I've always distinguished the gods from kind of the UFOs, but if you look at the description of a UFO in modern times, and you look at some of the description of beings, especially in the Old Testament, there's no difference. And I've said this before. I think that angels are synonymous, with ETs. It's exactly the same. So I don't really think that there's really a difference there.
So really we can just I just say I have referred to them due to my spiritual glitters, and the name Elohim keeps coming to me, and that's because the last couple of years I'm getting this energy of I'm calling it the Christ consciousness. I'm not a Christian, I'm not anything. I'm spiritual, but I'm aware of this not the man, the Christ consciousness, and I'm aware of not myself, of being aware of the Elohim, for me this energy of unconditional love is what I'm looking at, the creator gods, not the source. So, and then when I put that together, I think, well, Okay, they're in all the scriptures, and I know the scriptures have been written by men and whatever, but when I change the way I look at it, you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I can see that I can go back and read some scriptures, but I read it totally different with a totally different perception and outcome. Does that make sense to you? The more that you...
Yeah, that does. So I know Rudolf Steiner talks about the Christ consciousness as well, and this entity of, just pure love.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because when I've talked about giants before, we look at certain giant civilizations and, I've said, well, they were bloodthirsty, they were cruel. And I think that's the case for many of the giant civilizations, but there are also these benevolent giants who clearly taught humankind, us normal looking human beings, I would say, who taught us things and left a positive legacy, for us. So I think that as with everything, there's kind of a dualism, good against
I think
evil.
there's a dualism. Look, I mean, you're in what is this 3D reality we're in? It's a polarity. It's got to have the opposite. So look at the human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens. We just spoke about what the British, did to the rest of the world. Not all British are bad. Not that all the UK people are bad. So you're going to have, it's obvious, you're going to have, even in the animal kingdom, I've witnessed it. I watched the documentaries. You'll get some bears that will shred you to bits. But for some unknown reason, some bears will save you, or you get lions that will cuddle you. So you can see in every species, there's going to be the polarity. But
exactly.
It's the controllers but it's failed now, directed the history, obviously they write it in a certain way, like fee, fo, fi, fum. I'm going to be ate by a giant. And that will stop me going into, looking at giants. So, and if I go back to Poseidon and Zeus and all of that, when you break that down, and what it's about are these ginormous beings with these powers and abilities to Zeus, to Poseidon, the water, Moses, the water.
Parting the water,
And all of that. And the powers they had, all of that to me, I still hold, I don't know if it's true, but it's a theory that at one point, the giants, the gods walked the earth. I think they did interact with the humans, the women, and I think there were offspring of such. Don't ask me how. There is a gene that is being picked up, giganticism or whatever gene it's called. I know that. Have you heard of that?
I have. So
I don't know if that relates to that or not. I don't know. And I don't know if the environment now is not suitable for that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think that, so there are some giants. I mean, you get to see in the Bible who seem to be genetic anomalies, but there's also a race of giants that seem to descend from a civilization that is so old that the biblical authors don't quite know what it is. So I think you have both of those things going on. It's interesting, you mentioned Moses, and there's this really one of the most interesting passages in the Old Testament. I mentioned this to my students in my college class. Moses says that, it's kind of funny, when he's on Mount Sinai, it says that he saw the feet, regel, of the Lord. And there are these giant feet, literally, that are blazing like brass.
Yes.
So, and whatever this really tall, super huge being is where Moses gets his instruction and his guidance from.
Yeah.
So, what's going on there with that? I've always found it a very interesting story.
Yeah, but they're the bits that everyone, gets over with. Just, we won't take any notice
people
of
just.
that. It's not.
It's just metaphorical language.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look at that, and if you've got the gods there, and there's Moses, and then he's got this rod, so who knows who gave him that? And the power he had, like Poseidon and all the rest of them, he could do anything. He could do anything. He could, split the waters. He could do anything he wanted because if you in the history that is recorded in mythology, these gods, we call them the creator gods, or the Elohim, it doesn't really matter. The things, the tasks and the feats that they would do were what we call magical superpowers. And also I want to bring into this as well, I mean, we're never going to get defined answer, who are they? So, you know, we say giants, or I say Elohim or creator gods, it doesn't really matter. But it's very important, I feel, for what we're coming up to now, the you know, our civilization now, with reference to these divine beings. And the reason I'm throwing this in the pot as well is I am aware, but please correct me. Way back, I was listening to some documentaries, and the Native American Indians, I don't know which tribe, were talking about when the star people will come back, when they will return, or the ant people will return. Or are you aware of that? I don't know.
Yes, it's kind of I'm Christianizing it, which I shouldn't, but yeah, kind of like a second coming, an apocalypse.
Yeah.
But that will spawn a time. Not necessarily so in the Christian apocalypse, it's like destruction of the world, fire, and brimstone. But no, this is a positive thing where we represent a shift in the mentality that human beings have. Yes,
that's
I'm aware of that.
That's what I was trying to get into, and I'm not well schooled in that area, but that's what I was. I mean, I always say to people, it's not a physical, it's a spiritualization of the physical. It's a spiritual apocalypse. I keep saying it's the only way I can describe it. But the why I raised that is because I'm hearing not only experientially myself, but others are talking about these beings, these energies coming in, that some are, you don't see them, that they don't have form, but it's an unconditional love. It's a powerful, and people saying, I'm sure it's angels. We just, you know, what's in our psyche, these beings are everywhere, and things are being revealed of these beings, like what I'm just about to do, to go to the island off the mainland.
There's a woman I listen to on the radio, Geraldine Orozco, shout out to her. But she talks about, there's a movie that she did recently called Extraordinary, The Seeding.
Yeah, I see.
Talking about yes, and talking about kind of how there's been an increase in these encounters with these, I guess, higher spiritual or ETs, if you want to call them, and you know, that how they're interacting with humanity, and a lot of what we consider to be defects. So she talks about children who are being diagnosed as autistic. And the like. And we've always viewed that, you know, that negatively. Like, we have a horrible view of people with autism, you know, just a horrible history of it. But these people are coming in and they have these powers, they have these abilities, they have this knowledge that is really world shifting and paradigm shifting. But we're so caught up in and going back again to this materialist secular bubble that the modern era has. We're so caught up into that, we're not seeing the ways that, you know, this new shift is starting to come into play. So I definitely, I agree with you 100% that something's, you know, that we're kind of entering a new.
We are. I mean, and it's quite, I mean, for me, it's coming from, you know, I keep saying, you know, the gods are here. Okay, the gods are here. I can say gods. I don't have to keep saying demigods, but because, you know, it's just the gods are here and they walk upon the earth. They're not like they're walking in the physical aspect they did before. It's something, they're here. And for me, that can only mean a shift, the shift for the return. And then you look at all of the prophecies from whatever religion, well, it doesn't matter, and they all talk of the return. I know in Islam they talk about Imam Mahdi, and and what they say about him, they say also with him comes Jesus. Now there's a shocker for most people, isn't it? I studied Islam, and Imam, and what's written that no one really researches into, it is said, when the Imam Mahdi comes, all of you are going to be so shocked because nothing is what you think it is. And it goes on like that, very much what we're already aware of. And they predict that, but they also predict the man Jesus at the same time. So I'm trying to just bring this all in a pot somewhere to see where it goes. And then I've been aware of, and many others, out of the blue, and I'm not religious, Christ consciousness. And I'm aware it's Christ consciousness. And I don't know how I'm aware it's Christ consciousness. And this unconditional love. But it's not Christian Christ consciousness, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. So with all of that, for me, I'm starting thinking the gods have returned. The gods have, or the star people have returned, whatever terminology. Does that resonate with you at this period of time?
Yeah, well, it's interesting going back to, you were talking about, the technology and what the giants have contributed to humanity. And this made me think of, so you mentioned, Moses and
Yeah.
his interaction with this giant dude with these brass feet.
Yeah.
And not just Moses, Hammurabi.
Yeah.
There's a relief that I show my students. Hammurabi himself, like Gilgamesh, was also considered of gigantic stature.
Yeah.
And he is given this law by this, there's a relief that I show my students by this giant person, maybe personification of female wisdom, but could very well be a literal, actual historical person who was a giant. And they give Hammurabi this law code. Same as with Moses. This being gives Moses this law code, and these laws are designed to help human beings live more in harmony with one another. Now, whether that happens or not, that's a whole debatable question.
It's the same with Muhammad in Islam. He went to the cave.
Exactly.
They say it was Gabriel, but he came and give him the laws. He came and give him the laws. So these powerful beings, just called angels. It's just a different terminology. It's very similar. Very similar.
Yeah. And I think something is happening in modern times.
Yes.
With, I think we're getting a new law. We're getting a new dispensation.
Yes, I agree with you. And many people,
just like they did back in the day.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's exponential, because I know that I call it downloads. I hate it, but it's, I tried to change it, but no one understands what you're talking about. So we call it downloads. But there are millions of people now on this earth are coming out, and they're getting this information. And it's a new way of life, a new way to live. The old system doesn't work. What is hidden will be revealed. What we thought was a correct procedure, moral principle, we look at it now and go, that's illogical. We're shifting and seeing that how, I suppose you could say, we were slaves to ourselves in our limited. So that's what I'm thinking, because it's not just other beings are coming in. People are, look at me, I created podcasts and shows. We're all co-creating collectively now.
It's not just listening and just regurgitating what somebody else says, or just just studying what somebody else wrote years ago. We're starting to take an more active role in understanding things. So for understanding ourselves.
So the gods being here, that just, I can't say, well, I have to bring an inference there. I have to, because it's all happening, and everyone seems to be getting, if not the same, a very similar message, or knowing. It's everyone, and we're all connecting all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. So I like the idea that the gods have returned, and I think that's it's all positive for humanity. And I want to say on that, how does this resonate with you? Also, I have this experience, as many like me as well. I feel like I'm on a different timeline to, like, I've left one Earth, and I'm now on you're smiling. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I'm in another.
I definitely do. I'm
on a different timeline. I'm not on that timeline no more. Does that resonate with you? You smiled.
Yeah. I think we're so conditioned for, this 24/7 kind of routine that we have, that's kind of been ingrained in us in our modern society. And I know that I've had, several experiences. And I feel like you kind of have to, nothing against big cities, but you kind of have to get away from
Yes.
all the hustle and bustle to experience it. But I've been, out in the Midwest where, I've been on excavations and to different mounds, especially at mounds. One, I felt a very powerful spiritual energy at
Wow.
these different mounds. And then two, just a different type of time. It's almost like time stands still,
Yeah.
or time moves at a different level,
Yes.
different pace, excuse me,
Yeah.
than, what I'm used to, back on the East Coast here in Jersey,
It's just fast and
24/7, waking up
furious.
at
Yeah.
5:30.
In
Yeah.
that experience, did you, I mean, I know when I've had encounters, obviously you feel the physical aspect of it, and obviously the brain's trying to analyze what's going on. It has no idea. But then you seem to have maybe an expansion or an understanding. So
Yes.
did you find out every time that you went?
Definitely an expansion. And then when I move closer to, going back to the cities, I lose some of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, I've a year and a half ago, just over, I moved out of a small town and moved into a village where I am now, and basically been on my own. Oh my God, it's so quiet. I'm sure my neighbors are all dead. It's that quiet. And there's just the animals and, the odd noise. But the time I spent alone, I'm not lonely, but I'm alone. And I've had more connection, or whatever you want to, interaction with these beings, these gods, or Christ consciousness, whatever, in the silence. It's been the silence that is needed. So when I have to go to the town shopping, I feel it like this. It's too fast. It's too.
I very much feel. Yeah. And you lose some of that, that illumination that you get in the silence. One of my favorite stories in the Old Testament is with the prophet Elijah. And Elijah he's on the run. He's having a bad day. The Queen Jezebel's trying to kill him. And he's like, where is God? Where is God? And so he looks for God in the earthquake. He looks for God in the volcano, the rumbling and the tumbling. And then he hears a still small silence.
Yes.
And that is where the divine is. And I've always found that to be a powerful story and very, very relevant for my own spiritual walk. I'm sure yours as well.
Yeah. I mean, when I say silence, everybody, it's silent, but it's alive.
Yeah. Yes.
It's alive, it's conscious, but it's silent.
Yeah.
I can't say it any other way. And it is in that silence. You could be anywhere and you just you feel it, you just sense it. It's a knowing. But I mean, before we end the podcast, have you got any like really favorite stories to tell us about any giants or any the Native Americans or anything about them you could share with us, or anything that's the most weirdest one, or the funniest one, or anything at all about the giants of the Native Americans?
Yeah, there's so many.
Pick your best.
I think I think that one of the things I found was really cool was that at one of these mounds there was excavated not a king but a queen. So there was this female giant who was kind of in control of everything, similar to the Irish warrior giant that you guys have in your tradition. And I always thought that was very interesting. We think of the ancient world as very patriarchal in some ways, but it actually wasn't. And I think that's a very interesting example of that.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? I do hope, I do believe it will happen. What is hidden will be revealed. That the remains of these beings, skeletal remains, will be revealed and come forth, and people are going to go, well, but by then, I mean, I don't know. For me, I'm like a child with things like this. I know it's true. I'm sorry, it's true. When I say the Greek gods are real, no, they're not. And they're real. I know they're real. They walked upon the earth, and with what's going on today, I think for people to share their research on the giants is really important now, because as we said, something is occurring, and we're not going to digress off that. We can do that on another show. But something's going on with the giants. And when I go over to the island, they've got these caves in there. I'm at the beginning of my research. And I'll tell you what the spookiest thing was. Before I started to research, like on the computer, I had this awareness already. Isn't that weird? And I kept saying, that's going to be there. I say to someone, that's there, that's there, that's there. And then when I went to research, I went, oh my God, it's there, it's there. But I never knew. So that is another one that's coming through. But they had the caves, and the giants lived in the caves, the gods,
Yes, yes.
and they went underground.
And that's interesting because, as you know, Heather Arnold will say about the giants of Aruba, they lived in caves. And then when you get to the question of North America, where did the giants go? Well, many people think that they went, you know, I think with the Hopewell and Adena civilization, they destroyed themselves. But if there's any remnant of them left, they went underground, you know, to the hollow earth as well.
I mean, they have done some excavations in some of the caves and way back, and they found like human remains and, you know, like cannibalism and things like that.
Yeah.
But I have no issue. We on Earth, and we're able through research to find this out. Go research. We have cave systems that are so ancient, it's unbelievable. And we had it's passed down in narratives, the stories, like in native, same in other cultures of these giants that went into the caves. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of, you know, warring other civilization coming from them, or I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did. They'd have no issue digging a hole in Mother Earth, would they? Not with what they could do. So, you know, I'm not saying the physical giants are not, because it seems that they had a lifespan too, because remains. And also
they lasted a lot longer than we did. I mean, they had hundreds of years lifespans, but eventually their lifespan came to an end.
Yeah, but still in the Christian scripture, when they do the you know, he beget and he beget and he beget and every beget going down, they were in there something like they lived for like 600 years or 800 years or
600 to 800 years. Same with the Sumerian tablets that Zechariah Stitcher talks about. So,
but why is that not questioned? You know, I would say, how can a human being, why doesn't a human being live that long now? Don't ask them questions. You know, no one, you're not allowed to go in there, are you? But so you're saying.
And I think there's a reason for that. I think this world is much different. I think there was a shift in kind of, you know, the way things are in the world. I think back in the day, and Homer talks about this in the Iliad and Odyssey, I think not just people, but animals and basically the whole world in general was taller and stronger and greater, and we're on a gradual decline. And I think that, you know, we like to think of ourselves as the pinnacle of civilization, but compared to, and I think, you know, what we talked about, the technology and the stuff that they were doing back then, we aren't. So I think we've been on decline, but like you said, with this new awakening, you know, hopefully, you know, we'll get it together, and our ego and our pride won't allow us
I
to,
don't use the word hope, my love. We've done it. I don't use the word hope. I'm on that timeline. We've done it. Do you know what, Adam? I can't thank you enough. We could have gone off anywhere, and I mean, there was just so much coming, and really it was a personal show for me because I'm so interested in the giants, and I can't wait to my travels next month to the island off the mainland, and to just be in the energy of this long stone and everything else, is the richness of it. And I'm sure I'm going to pick up something to come to me over there. And I'm going to have you back on the show.
That'd be awesome.
To come back on another time. And I can't wait to speak to you again. It has been awesome. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you for giving
Thank you so much, Gloria, for having me. This was great.
It was fun, wasn't it? It's fun. It's fun. Okay, everybody. Thank you for watching Inception Special. You can find Inception Special on Facebook, YouTube, and also it is on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, where you will find amazing podcast creators The topics are so diverse. There's something for everybody. They're working really hard to raise consciousness, to get the information out there. I don't need to name them all because I think you must all know them by now, but do go over there, check them out, and please support and subscribe this podcast with me. Until the next time I have a conversation, thank you, Adam, once again, and bye, everybody.
Take care.